The streetlights hummed to life, casting long, flickering shadows across the cracked pavement of a quiet suburban driveway. You push off the curb, pedals spinning, drifting into a deep silence that modern children never actually hear. There is no vibration in your pocket, no digital tether, no blue dot tracking your location on a map. You are 5 miles from home, the sun is setting, and absolutely nobody is panicking about where you are. This wasn't negligence, it was a specific type of trust that feels almost alien to describe to people today. Your only boundary was the streetlights turning on, a flexible contract signed with a nod before you walked out. In that vast, unsupervised space, between the front door and the horizon, a distinct psychology began to form. When the chain came off your bike, you didn't call for a rescue because help wasn't coming. You stared at the grease, the metal, and the problem, until your hands figured out the mechanics alone. That specific moment created a voice in your head that still speaks up 40 years later today. It whispers, "I will figure this out," even when you are completely lost and overwhelmed by modern adulthood. But to understand why we were given this dangerous freedom, you have to look at who raised us. Our parents were the silent ones, the generation that walked out of the ashes of World War II. They carried heavy memories of ration books, real hunger, and a world that could end overnight. Because they had seen the worst of humanity, a scraped knee or a lost bike seemed incredibly trivial. They didn't ask us how we felt every hour. They watched us survive small failures in absolute silence. You saw your father fix the sink, not because he enjoyed it, but because replacing it wasn't optional. You saw your mother endure exhaustion without posting about it for validation from strangers on the internet. Responsibility was not a lecture you sat through in school. It was the oxygen you breathed at home. This environment forced a backbone to grow before you were even old enough to understand what resilience meant. You learned early that if something broke, the solution was in your hands, not in a store. You repaired, you patched, you adapted, and you moved forward without ever waiting for permission. Help wasn't a service you summoned. Help was just you standing in the garage alone. This upbringing created adults who feel older than they actually are, even right now. It is a maturity carved from watching neighbors help neighbors without ever taking a photograph. You witnessed adults carrying the crushing weight of real life without crumbling or complaining. That silence taught you that life is serious, but entirely handleable if you stay calm. And here is the part that nobody really talks about when remembering those years. We were the bridge generation, standing with one foot in history and one in the future. We remember the texture of a world that was slow, raw, silent, and incredibly real. But we also watched that world evaporate, replaced by the noise of the digital age. We carry the memory of boredom, of sitting on a porch with absolutely nothing to do. That boredom was not empty. It was the fertile soil where our imagination actually grew. Compare that to the generation born after the towers fell and the smartphones rose. They grew up with a glowing screen in their hands before they could speak in sentences. Their minds have been running at maximum speed since the very first day they opened their eyes. They absorb more information in a single breakfast than we saw in an entire week. You can see the exhaustion in their eyes, a fatigue that sleep does not fix. They are drowning in connection, but starving for the solitude we took for granted. Their confidence is fragile because it is built on likes, not on surviving the dark. They constantly measure their private lives against the public highlights of strangers they will never meet. Even when they are resting, the thumb keeps scrolling, and the brain keeps processing data. This is a generation that is smart and creative, yet deeply exhausted by the noise. They are trying to survive a world that moves faster than the human nervous system allows. So, the question remains, hanging in the air between the past and the present. Which generation truly had it harder? The one that faced physical danger or mental siege? Was it harder to grow up with silence and scarcity, or with noise and excess? I want to know where you stand on this timeline of human experience. Were you born before the digital curtain fell in 1980? Or did you arrive after? Do you remember the world before it connected? Or have you only known the web? There is a specific strength that comes not from being taught, but from being tested. We are looking for the people who still carry that quiet, analog confidence today. The ones who know that true connection doesn't happen on a timeline, but in real time. If you recognize this mindset, you are not the only one left who feels this way. We are gathering the people who remember how to fix things rather than throw them away. If you want to sit with us and discuss the old world, the link is waiting below. This isn't just a channel, it is a signal flare for those who value the silence. Like the video to help this signal reach the others who are still looking for us. Join us, and let's keep the memory of that resilience alive a little longer. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs people who know how to endure it.